Hello everybody, welcome back. It's Chris VanMeter here, otherwise known as CVM, with another awesome deck for you guys with our Versus video. I'm going to be playing against Mr. David McDarby, and I have a sweet deck that I actually played something similar this last weekend at the Open in Richmond, and I wrote about it in my article that you can check out that went up on Wednesday of this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. It's a little number I like to call Green-White Elves. So as you can see here, we can make a lot of mana. So we have 4 of the new Elvish Mystics, or the fancy Llanowar Elves. We have 4 Abyssin's Pilgrim. Not really an elf, but does a very good impersonation. And we have 4 Arbor Elves that all allow us to accelerate right out of the gates on turn 1 into Old Standby Elvish Archdruid. So in times past, we would play Arbor Elf and our Llanowar Elves that would allow us to accelerate into Archdruid, that would then let us cast big, giant, crazy spells. And so for now, we get to play the same shell, except we also have Pilgrim to go along with it. So we have 12 one-drop mana accelerants to go along with our Elvish Archdruids. Now we also have Elvish Visionary, which is another elf. It doesn't make mana per se, but it does draw us a card, and then lets the Archdruid tap for another mana. So it ultimately does end up generating this mana in the long run. And so what are we going to do with all this mana that we got? So first off, we have some creatures that we want to be casting. We have Acidic Slime. So we all know I love me an Acidic Slime. Definitely excited to be playing old Slime Ball again. And in this deck, now that we have all of the mana accelerants, I'm going to be putting Slime into play very consistently on turn 3, at the latest turn 4, like I used to with Junk Reanimator. But this time I don't really have to jump through hoops with Grizzly Salvage to find specific cards. Just have to draw Slime and cast it. Same deal with Thragtusk. I had Thragtusk in my sideboard this last weekend, didn't have it in the main deck. It's definitely one of the best cards in the sideboard, and it's just much better than Garruk Relentless. I was playing Garruk Relentless, but I'd much rather accelerate into a Thragtusk than a Garruk Relentless, because Thragtusk is awesome on turn 4 or 5, whereas Garruk usually is awesome on turn 4 or 5 as well, but Tusk is much better on turn 3 than Garruk Relentless is. Now, since we're playing Slime and Thragtusk, we might as well play Restoration Angel. Angel lets us get value out of those creatures, as well as we can even just flat, good old country draw card with Elvish Visionary if we need to, with our Restoration Angel. Now, the 2 big daddies that we have in the deck that we're going to be accelerating into with all of our mana is Garruk, Caller of Beasts. Now, this card is absolutely awesome. It's exactly what you would want a 6-mana Planeswalker to be. His +1 is going to let us reveal the top 5 cards of our deck and put all of our creatures that we reveal into our hand, and as you can see, we have plenty. His -3 lets us put a green creature into play. So we can, something as simple as like turn 3 Slime, turn 4 Garruk, -3, put a Slime into play. At that point, they're not going to be able to kill the Garruk, and then we can just start +1ing them from there. But we also have Craterhoof Behemoth, so if we're vomiting out all these little idiots into play that are giving us mana, drawing cards, destroying their lands, opponents will usually get back into the game if you give them a chance. This guy just takes it away, nail in the coffin. This guy's going to break you. He does this very, very good impersonation of a Russian boxer. Now, the other spell that we have in the deck is Gavany Township. So being as we are a very linear deck, we have just one goal in mind: play dudes, make mana, play bigger dudes, kill our opponent. Gavany Township lets us play some additional spells in the forms of our land. So we have all these little creatures that we're going to be putting into play. Sometimes, we're not going to draw the additional parts that we need to finish our opponent. Township lets us do that. So we just have our normal mix, the 8 white dual lands, a bunch of forests, and 1 Cavern of Souls. So I'm playing a Cavern of Souls because I do have the Angels in the main, so I want it to be a white source and a green source to cast the other spells that I have. But I also have some more spells in the sideboard that we want to be able to take use of our Cavern of Souls. So again, we've got all this mana. We're going to be putting some giant things into play and try and kill our opponents, but sometimes they are going to be able to interact with us, and that's why we have the sideboard for. So let's go ahead and take a look at what options we have in our sideboard. Alrighty, welcome back. Let's take a look at the sideboard for our Green-White Elves deck. So we'll start with these 2. As you saw in the main deck, I only had 3 Thragtusk and 3 Restoration Angel, and sometimes those cards are just very good against what our opponents are trying to do. So we have the 4th Tusk and the 4th Angel that we can bring in against whatever we need. If we want to bounce more Acidic Slimes, we need the Angel. If we want to gain a bunch of life so they can't kill us, we play the Thragtusk. I also have 4 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So this is the main reason why I also have the Cavern of Souls in the main deck, is for the Thalias. Against the like Supreme Verdict decks and Bonfire decks and decks with like a bunch of 1 or 2 mana removal, Thalia is just awesome against them. It slows them down a turn, but doesn't slow us down a turn because all of our awesome spells are just dudes. Like we have the 4 big Garrix in the deck, but whether we're playing him on turn 5, turn 4, turn 5, or turn 6, it really doesn't matter. He's going to have the same effect, but this allows us to get to that point. And then we also have our 3 other spells down here. So we have Paraselene as an enchant removal spell against Man Hexproof. This last weekend I did play Raid Revelation instead, and I was very unhappy with it. The main reason being is they just play like a billion enchantments, and killing 2 of them isn't going to stop them from killing you. So, I mean, I even had one game where I Raid Revelationed Unflinching Courage, flashed it back on an Ethereal Armor. He just reloaded. I fogged, killed him again. He reloaded and then just killed me. So, like, I definitely just want to be able to kill all of the enchantments that are on the creature at that one point, because most of the time the hexproof players are fairly greedy. So they have this invisible stalker that they know we can't kill, so they're just going to throw everything on it, and this takes care of that and the kitchen sink. Rootborn Defenses as the card that I want to use against Supreme Verdict, Blasphemous Act, and Bonfire of the Damned. It is fair to mention that Pay No Heed does the same thing as this against Bonfire and Blasphemous Act, but Rootborn Defenses also protects us against Supreme Verdict, and I would just much rather have the versatility of it. But it would be very reasonable to play Pay No Heed instead of Rootborn Defenses. And we have some beautiful Mirage Fogs that I'm going to be using. You want to have it against the mono red deck. It's also good against Hexproof. It's also good against any other type of deck that's going to try and deal 20 points of damage to you all at once. Hint, hint. So the fog is definitely going to be useful for this video. I did play 3 fogs in my deck this last weekend, and I definitely liked it. It is just something that you have to have with this type of deck. When there's haymakers going back and forth, he who gets to take an extra turn is usually going to be the one that's going to win. So I'm definitely excited to play this deck, and so let's go ahead and jump into the matches, and we'll see how Mr. McDarby and myself get to battle.